BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to our discussion about the Zodiac Killer today. But first, I would like to say that it is now October, and it is a great time to catch up on horror films. Recently on the channel, we were talking about popcorn flicks as well as film rise movies. Great places to find movies here on YouTube, horror films available here on YouTube for free. And I recently discovered a new one, Horror Central, which has some titles that I'm going to be adding to the list: Haunting at Foster Cabin, The Coffin Films, A Haunting in Salem. So some good things to look out for. Once again, Horror Central, available here on YouTube for free, a free movie channel that you can watch if you're into that type of content. And if you want to find their specific videos, they have an HC in the corner for Horror Central. Some of them say THC. And if you're listening to this at a future date, horror movies are great year-round, but I definitely try to watch a lot of horror films in October. Moving on to our discussion about the Zodiac Killer today, I was doing something recently that was not very advisable, and that was spending an enormous amount of time on Reddit, reading through what other people have to say. And when I say that it's not a good use of time, in the past I've been really trying to stay away from this stuff when we're talking about any true crime case, because one of the problems with Reddit is sometimes it puts you down a weird thought spiral, and it can confuse you rather than convince you. Or somebody will be asking a particular question, and it'll get you thinking in an ineffective way, or it can be a distraction, let alone the amount of time you just spend reading what people have to say over and over again. But we did come across a particular question that I thought was rather interesting, and giving a shout out to user Tessa is Cold. Well, if you're cold, why don't you try hot chocolate? Yeah, but Tessa is Cold writes something here about the Zodiac Killer. How will you feel if the killer is found and it isn't your pet suspect? And this is a rather lengthy post, so I thought we could read through some of this, and then we could discuss the contents of this article here, or this post, I should say. Obviously, all of us will be thrilled if the killer was caught and there was a closing to the case. My question is really targeted at people who have a strong opinion on who the Zodiac is. People that are more than just normal folk and are fascinated with the case like most of us. I'm talking about the heavyweights of the community. So, as we see, this isn't really directed at me. I'm by no means a heavyweight of the community. I mean, as well as to say that this is also going to be about people who are really zoned in on a suspect, because the next line is some people have spent decades researching and investigating, and people who have spent thousands of hours to come up with a suspect, maybe even written a book or two about it, and then it turns out your suspect was not the Zodiac Killer. How would they feel? The first thing I would say about that is, in the true crime genre, it really comes down to the concept of the word true in true crime, and it's about the answers. It's not about any individual theory or any person's particular belief. This isn't something like a political opinion where you can just argue the different sides of the issue. There is a definitive answer in this mystery, and that's what people are really trying to get toward. But the names that Tessa has listed off here, it's like how people like Tom Voight, Ray Grant, Mike Butterfield, Morph, Sandy, Mark Hewitt, Richard Grinelli, Grinelli, and even Tessa asked, is that spelled correctly? Richard Grinelli. Hey, Richard, if you're listening, I didn't know you were Italiano. And Mike, that dude who wrote a book claiming that Cavalli was the Zodiac. That is, of course, talking about Mike Rodelli. And then also Eddie and the Gaikowski crowd. Eddie, I don't know who this Eddie is, actually. If you woke up tomorrow and the headline was Zodiac caught, a suspect has been caught as the notorious killer, after being happy that the real killer has been found and will be brought to justice, do you feel embarrassment, sorrow, anger, regret, or some other emotion that you spent a decade and thousands of hours and you were 100% wrong? You argued with, even insulted people who didn't believe your theory. You wrote a book about it and were 100% wrong. Would you feel you've wasted years, decades of your life for nothing? It says years/decades of your life for nothing. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I would have to say that the Zodiac Killer mystery is so much larger than simply who was this killer, what was his name. When you look at the Zodiac Killer mystery, there's some things like the meanings and the ciphers, as well as perhaps some of the psychological components. Maybe somebody might not get the name exactly right, But what they would be able to do is describe certain psychological elements that the Zodiac Killer was experiencing, as well as all the influences from magazines and comic books and literature and movies, as well as perhaps some other types of references and symbology and anything that people are theorizing and hypothesizing about. Maybe some of those things would be right, and maybe some of these people here that she lists off, such as Tom Voigt, Grant, Butterfield, Morph, and Mark Hewitt, maybe they would be onto something in a particular direction, or maybe some of their claims are going to be accurate. With the Zodiac Killer mystery, one of the reasons why people are really pulled into this is because there are so many different elements going on. Yes, we want to know how the murders happened. That is absolutely most important. How was this person carrying out these murders, and how would you bring the person to justice? But another thing on that note, just to say a real quick side note, it's highly likely that the Zodiac Killer has passed away. I mean, most of the suspects that these people are going to be promoting, such as Tom Voigt promoting Richard Gaikowski, he passed away. What was that? 2004 thereabouts. And did Shel Cavalli pass away? I believe. And then even who was that other one? Oh no, Gaikowski's written twice. I mean, but he has passed away. Arthur Lee Allen. How about him? He definitely passed away. Even other people like Louis Myers passed away. And I mean, as the years go by, many of the prime Zodiac Killer suspects are no longer with us. And I think that that is something that is just going to be standing the test of time. And somebody left a comment about this recently on someone else's upload. No, they were talking about the Golden State Killer. And they said that the Zodiac Killer mystery will not have a Golden State Killer ending. I'm not 100% convinced of that, because this isn't a case like Jack the Ripper. Instead, this is one that took place in the 20th century. Jack the Ripper was, of course, around 1888 and such, the Whitechapel murders. So there is some hope that at some point, someday, the case could be solved. And Drew Beeson made an interesting claim when he said that the case will never be solved to anyone's satisfaction, meaning that somebody might get it right, but maybe we won't have an absolute consensus on who the Zodiac Killer was and how were all of these murders committed. Paul Holes, one of the investigators during the Golden State Killer mystery, made the strong claim that he didn't believe that it was D'Angelo. He didn't believe that Joseph D'Angelo was the Golden State Killer at first, because he thought that there were better suspects out there that matched up to the evidence much more so than Joseph D'Angelo. However, he had to have a reversal on that because of what DNA, as well as perhaps other evidence that was left behind, but particularly the DNA evidence in the Golden State Killer mystery. We've talked a lot about that case here on the channel, and I will include a link to the beginning of our discussion series on the Golden State Killer if you would like to hear more about that. It'll be available in the description box here. The best way you can support this channel is just by listening to some more of our content. All you got to do is listen, never asking for any money. Just listen to some more of our content. If you like what you hear, you can share with your friends on social media, and that will be available in the description box on the Golden State Killer. Now, let's go on to Tessa's post, because she says something else here. Will you apologize for running a family's name and reputation through the mud? Or would being 100% wrong not have any effect on you at all? You enjoyed the research and the investigation and the thrill of the chase, and that was more important to you than being right or wrong with the suspect you chose to present yourself as your pick as the Zodiac. It says your, not yourself. Excuse me, I misread that line. The first thing we should say, though, apologize for running a family's name and reputation through the mud. As far as I understand, the family of Ross Sullivan really doesn't like Ross being accused of being the Zodiac Killer, even though Ross passed away in 1977. Another Zodiac suspect who is no longer with us, Tony Tola, passed away in 1974. So we can see that it's been 51 years since the murders in 1969, and almost 52 years. Like, we'll be approaching Lake Herman Road in just about 2 months. But we do have the anniversary of Paul Stein coming up fairly soon, the 51st anniversary, that is. But some other people who have spoken out about this are the family members of Arthur Lee Allen. One of the things that was included in the Great Zodiac Killer hoax of 1986 was that Arthur Lee Allen's family actually filed a defamation suit against Robert Graysmith because he included something in the book Zodiac from 1986 saying that they believe that Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac Killer. They were like, we made no such claims. They filed a suit for defamation. They're saying that this is liable. And this was actually settled out of court. That's the only time I've read that in the Great Zodiac Killer hoax of 1986, written by Thomas Henry Horn. But I digress from that because the next thing we should say is, would being 100% wrong not have any effect on you at all? And my biggest response to something like that is that there are many different dimensions. And as long as people are being honest and through their explanations, I mean, if someone were to go about it in that way, I really don't think that many people would be completely devastated. And once again, I'm not a heavyweight. I'm really not one of the people that would ever be included on this list. And I haven't even taken too strong of stances, but trying to convince everybody of a single suspect. However, the best suspects that I would think are either Don Chaney or perhaps some variant of the group murder theory. And when I say Don Chaney, I was almost completely convinced in 2019 that this was a group, this was some type of group murder, maybe a multiple killers thing, maybe the Zodiac hoax thing. But then once I learned about Don Chaney as a Zodiac killer suspect, I don't know if I've ever heard a clearer narrative on how one person could have committed all of these crimes or how one person could have arranged all of this, or the type of personality matching the psychological profile, having access to the types of symbols that are used in the ciphers. It's just everything was answered, more or less. I mean, I thought the most critical pieces of information were answered, as well as why did Arthur Lee Allen become such a famous suspect? Because Don Chaney was using him as a patsy, using him as a fictitious facade, putting all the attention on him so he could avoid attention onto himself in that particular manner. Of course, Don Chaney is heavily mentioned throughout Robert Graysmith's narrative, and he's also included in the documentaries such as My Name is Arthur Lee Allen, and maybe also in, is he also in the one, This is the Zodiac speaking, but don't quote me on that. But the thing, though, to say about people exploring this, sometimes, as long as people are being honest and genuinely investigating, I think there is something to that. And I would hope that everybody would do what Tessa said at the beginning. They would have that moment of not exactly celebration, but that just moment of joy if the case were solved in a type of Golden State Killer ending, when they were able to use genealogical histories to trace the DNA back to a particular origin in the 1800s and then move forward, and then they were able to find D'Angelo. But the thing with Joseph D'Angelo, which is quite different than the Zodiac Killer, is he operated from 1974 to 1986, which is a very typical time period for a serial killer. And D'Angelo almost seems like he was definitely more into the power tripping, the things like the sexual assaults and the burglaries, as well as putting people in incapacitated states. And the Zodiac Killer operated in a very short time period. It is October right now, just before the anniversary of Paul Stein's murder in 1969, and the Zodiac canonical crimes take place within the span of one calendar year, one 12-month cycle. And it really is quite remarkable. I mean, remarkable, I would say, just very different for a very short period of activity for a serial killer. Many serial killers who are repeat offenders are doing this 8 years, 9 years, 12 years, like we said, 1974 to 1986. So that is something else just to think about. But there's an expression that the chase is more fun than the catch. And this is what Tessa was writing here. You enjoy the research, the investigation, and the thrill of the chase. There's that expression, the chase is more fun than the catch. I have never liked this expression in English because I don't believe it. The catch is more fun than the chase. Maybe after the catch, then there is something else that people don't like. No, that moment when you catch whatever you were trying to catch, whether it's a fish or a baseball in center field, that moment, that's worth everything. So I've never liked that phrase. And the other thing to say is, this isn't the only mystery out there. This isn't the only unsolved murder case. There are so many more unsolved cases out there that people can learn about. There's so many other mysteries, period. And you often see this, though. Sometimes somebody will go from something in the true crime world to exploring something else, or people will go from different things. Like, I saw this documentary once where this one guy is exploring just a mystery, but then he starts going into comic book histories and researching old comic books, he found a different thing to learn about because he had solved one particular mystery. And another guy went from, we talked about him once on the channel, his name is Serge Aurol, he's a French writer. He was really researching things about, which stories are true and false about children raised by wolves. He wrote a book called Enigma of the Wolf Child. That's a nutshell version. Then he switched to studying an ancient king of Ethiopia. So it's like he took on something else. There is not a shortage of things that we can learn about, as well as, even if you just want to focus on the murder mysteries or the serial killers or the unsolved cases, the cold cases, you're never going to run out of those things. And recently on the channel, we've also been talking a lot about the Maura Murray case. And with that one, what I can say is that it enters into a lot of the particular parameters because people have been spending years looking into the disappearance of Maura Murray back in 2004. And what we can say is, if indeed there is a conclusive ending to this, if there are conclusive findings that happened in the Maura Murray case, people would need to accept it. If there is a conclusive ending to the Zodiac killer mystery, whether it's DNA, the side palm print testing, fingerprints, some form of definitive physical evidence, like if you had found Paul Stein's wallet in somebody's home, and then they compared handwriting as well as fingerprints and palm prints and DNA, and all of this came back to being the same person, and maybe they even found a 9mm Luger buried under the floorboards, then you would be able to say, okay, it almost appears that we have the guy 99.99%, 0.1 can be, the ifs and the conspiracy theories that would start online. So I think that it's so much more important to be seeking the truth rather than anybody holding up their particular theory. And however, though, I told you what I thought about the case. Don Chaney or some variant of the group murder theory, but I'm definitely not one of these people who has spent decades involved with this, and that's definitely who the question was directed toward, but I think there is some valuable material in here that we can discuss. The question isn't a negative one. This is going back to Tessa's post, by the way. The question isn't a negative one, and it wasn't meant to insult anybody. I'm genuinely curious as to how people will feel if and when this happens. The Zodiac can't be Gaikowski, Kaczynski, Sullivan, Kane, Honcho, Cavale, Best, etc. So even if the Zodiac is a popular suspect, that means that everybody else was wrong. Hopefully people can discuss this without resorting to insults and negative name-calling. That's the end of the post here. Once again, this was from Reddit. Big thank you to Tessa for writing this out and giving us this thing here to discuss. Now, as far as some of these posts here, we recently had a comment come in from Mark Hewitt, and I would like to say, Mark Hewitt, thank you so much for checking out Black Box Online Radio. But Mark Hewitt's suspect appears to be Theodore Kaczynski, and I have to say, though, I'm really not quite even remotely convinced that Kaczynski was the Zodiac killer. And, it's really his whereabouts in the Bay Area on the nights of the canonical crimes does seem questionable. And we will be talking about Shel Cavale in the future. That's one of the people that is mentioned here on this list. In the near future, we will do an upload on Shel Cavale, and that person she mentioned who wrote the book about him was Mike Rodelli, who is all over Reddit as well. And then one of the names is also Earl Van Best Jr., just says Best here, but see, now he would be an example of somebody whom I was talking about recently. Just absolutely do not believe that Earl Van Best had anything to do at all with this Zodiac killer mystery. It appears that Gary Stewart, Susan Mustafa, and Michael Wachschel were promoting a fictitious narrative. But what I would say, though, is I'm really glad that she did ask this and included the line, this isn't a negative one. But the thing that we have to remember is not everybody can be right. The reason why I said political opinions is not the same thing, because you can be like, okay, I'm trying to convince you that this is a good thing to do. Or if you're going to just debate anybody, you're going to be like, I'm trying to convince you that my idea is good, or that perhaps you're making a particular assumption that shouldn't be made. In the true crime world, it's really not like that. The most important question is, who committed these murders on these specific dates? And then there's some follow-up questions. Are there any hidden meanings in the letters? What are the solutions to the ciphers? How did this individual choose the victims? And those are the things when I was saying that a lot of the people that are mentioned on this list, everybody from Tom Voigt to Ray Grant to Mike Butterfield to Richard Grinelli, would be going down the pathway of they probably have made some statement at some point in some time that is factually accurate about the Zodiac Killer. And as Tessa wrote very cleverly, if/when we would learn the truth about everything that was involved with this mystery, I would expect that those individuals have probably made some claims that would turn out to be factually accurate. But, once again, thank you to Tessa for writing this post here. We're really not going to harper down too much on Reddit and just read off these posts in the future. This is just going to be considered a one-off, but I would love to hear your responses to this challenge question. If you have a Zodiac Killer suspect, and it turns out that your Zodiac suspect was not the Zodiac Killer, what would you say? And even if you're not a Zodiac heavyweight, even if you don't have a single suspect whom you truly believe was the Zodiac Killer, but you're just a casual observer, or what did Tessa say? Ordinary folk like us. What would you say about it? Or even if there's something that you genuinely believe about the Zodiac Killer mystery, and it turns out that that's not true, what would you say about that? And the final concluding note that I'll leave you with is, when I started this channel, I used to really talk about my theories in the true crime cases, and I was wondering, why don't more people do this? Why don't more people just throw out their ideas on YouTube about, okay, I learned about this true crime case. Here's what I think happened. You want to know why more people don't do that? Because 97% of everything that I said was wrong. And if I were wrong about things, in conclusion, I've been wrong so many times on this podcast, and I had to take videos down. I was like, oh, what was I doing? Or I can't even let that stay out on there because I overlooked key details. I jumped into the situation too quickly. Or very simply, I just got it wrong because of making certain errors in judgment that anybody could have made. But at the same time, I was putting out things that I genuinely believed, and I thought it over, and this was the response. And I wasn't exactly devastated. It was more just I can't share this stuff with the internet, knowing that it's now factually inaccurate. But at the same time, going through that process, I could see that, okay, not everything I said was right, but we were still trying to get to the bottom of the mystery, and that's what this is all about. Okay, what are your answers to the challenge question? What are your responses? And thank you to Tessa one more time. And if you like this upload, you can hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you're welcome to do so. But most importantly, please put some comments in the section below so we can continue the discussion. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.